I live in a pretty small town in Washington state, where all sorts of strange shit happens. We have tunnels underneath our downtown area that were used by bootleggers that are supposedly haunted, and for a while, we had some dude everyone believed was the leader of some sort of possibly satanic cult, but I have personally experienced a few things that you folks might find interesting. I'm not trying to pass these off as paranormal, and I'm sure there are good explanations for them. Several years ago, when I was in the single digits, my mother and I went for a hike. More of a casual walk, really, around the trails on a densely wooded hill. To be clear, this is not an inner-wood situation, as the hill is inside the town itself and has a lot of residential areas and a water reservoir. These trails are well maintained and relatively well used for a town of this size. Long story short, near the top of the hill, visible from the trail, we spotted what looked to be a dog skull that had been painted black with red patterns. Now, I had just assumed, even as a kid, that this was some sort of prank, as there is not really shit to do around here, and my older brother and his other goth friends were into morbid art like that. However, that same month, a body was found somewhere off the trails. Again, probably unrelated. The only thing that makes me still think about that shit is when I was much older, sometime in high school. My buddy and I found another similarly painted skull, and since then, I remember hearing about one or two more bodies being found up there, probably unrelated to the skulls, but still weird. More stories to follow. So, all through middle and high school, I was extremely self-conscious of my weight and just wanted a QTGF. In an attempt to improve my health, I started briskly walking around town for several hours at a time, but was so self-conscious / socially anxious, I only felt comfortable going at night, often after 9 or so. I would always take my dog, some sort of black lab mix who would always get excited and want to chase after any cat, raccoon, or opossum he saw. I would explore new neighborhoods every night, but always took generally the same route home. 4 or 5 blocks away from my house was a small bridge that went over a small creek. As this was a smaller side street, there were not very many streetlights. The bridge itself was not very well lit. On several occasions, I saw some sort of creature scurry under the bridge. My dog would never get excited over it. He would just stare intently with tail down. I could not get close enough to get a good look at it, but its silhouette was that of a fat raccoon with thin front legs as long as a cat, and equally thin hind legs that were longer than the front pair, making its body slope slightly from the ass down to the face. Finally, and most recently, there have been empty strollers showing up all around town. It could be people trying to mug folks who go to check on them, but most of them have been in really open areas with nowhere for the mugger to hide. It is an open secret in the United Kingdom that a continuity underground facility exists under Birmingham, second largest city in England, and occasionally, military helicopters will make landings in the city where unmarked personnel will rush out and disappear into maintenance access tunnels. In Coventry, there are a ton of tunnels that most people don't even know exist. There are multiple entrances across the city which are usually locked off and require permission from the council to enter. Most of it leads to old utility facilities, but a good number of corridors are barricaded off. These tunnels lead to old bunkers that were dug out during the Blitz, and most of them failed during the bombing raids. Some rooms collapsed in on themselves or suffered partial collapse, killing the majority of their occupants inside. Instead of trying to retrieve the bodies, they were left inside what was left of the rooms and barricaded off, meaning that Coventry, unofficially, has mass graves under the very beating heart of the city, and the average denizen is completely unaware. Suffice to say, no one is too keen on trying to explore the tunnels by themselves, with rumors that the dead who are still trapped haunt the corridors to this day. They didn't even check for survivors. Brutal. Imagine being the poor sod the government did not even care about enough to come get you as you slowly die of starvation or thirst under some rubble, probably in pain from injuries, knowing it's all hopeless. In Novorossiysk, during the 1980s, housing was a significant issue, much like in many parts of the Soviet Union. Apartments were allocated primarily to the best workers, criminals, or those with connections. But in 1988 or 1989, something odd occurred. Two families who lived in small, cramped apartments in a Khrushchev-era building were suddenly moved into spacious, new two-room apartments in recently built, ship-shaped houses. These apartments were part of the famous 111 to 90 series. The sudden move was the subject of hushed discussions in the kitchens of Novorossiysk. The official media hailed the government's success in providing housing to workers, but the event remained largely unreported. Only a month later, the local newspaper briefly mentioned night public GTO exercises linked to an anti-communist statement by Reagan, but this was too vague, offering little context. At first, the residents of the affected apartments only quietly shared their experiences, being woken up at 3 a.m., hurriedly packing, seeing hoses and wires everywhere, and hearing the sound of cars in the yard. After a few months, however, the families began to see the benefits of their new living arrangements and began talking about the GDR walls that had been installed in the second room. My uncle, who lived in Novorossiysk, explained to me in a phone conversation that in the central district, at night, all the residents were unexpectedly evacuated from one of the Khrushchev-era buildings. A district police officer, groggy and unsure of the situation, moved from apartment to apartment, telling people about an impromptu civil training session or GTO exercises. He had no idea why only one building was involved. Residents were taken to a school building for the night and then sent to work the next morning. There were reports of strange things happening during the evacuation. Some residents from one of the entrances mentioned seeing hoses or cables extending from the street into an apartment on the third floor. This apartment later turned out to belong to one of the families that would be resettled. In the yard, there were cylinders, pumps, engines, and even free truck cranes stationed by the building. Ambulances, fire trucks, a large searchlight, and several military-style vehicles added to the chaotic scene. It seemed like an exercise, but things felt off, and there was a sense of panic among the residents. When the exercises were over, most of the residents were allowed back into their apartments, but the families from the third and second floors of one entrance were not so lucky. The family from the third floor were temporarily moved in with the district police officer. The second family was placed in a business traveler's apartment provided by the Ural electrochemical plant. Eventually, both families moved into the new ships of the 111 to 90 series. For a while, the evacuated apartments were used as a temporary headquarters for GTO exercises with officers stationed there, including one or two of a fairly high rank. After the operation concluded, the local newspaper ran a brief article praising the efforts of the authorities. The apartments, however, were left with new iron doors, strangely designed with no handles or keyholes. Years later, my uncle ran into one of the engineers involved in the resettlement, Marshalov, a migrant worker. They worked together for a while, and Marshalov shared some additional details. After the resettlement, the apartments remained sealed. In fact, Marshalov had tried to look inside one of the apartments through binoculars from a new building across the street. While looking through, he discovered something strange in one of the residents' apartments. There was a large opening in the floor of their apartment, made at an odd angle. The floor in these buildings was reinforced concrete, thick and strong, requiring special equipment to cut. The fact that someone had made a cut at an angle, which would have required cutting through a lot of reinforcement metal, made the whole situation even more mysterious. Such a difficult cut seemed unnecessary, especially since a much simpler one could have been made along the edges of the slab. This work was carried out in the late 1980s when advanced tools for such cutting was not as easily accessible. It raised questions. Why go through the extra trouble of cutting the floor in an intricate way, and why do it in the dead of the night? What was the purpose of removing the chunk of reinforced concrete, and where did it go? The presence of truck cranes and other heavy equipment added to the suspicion that something bigger was happening here. After the exercises were over, and the temporary headquarters were dismantled, the strange iron doors remained. My uncle's acquaintance, Marshalov, could never fully explain what had happened. Novorossiysk, being a closed city with secretive operations related to nuclear centrifuges only deepened the mystery. Perhaps it was part of a bizarre training exercise, or maybe something far more secretive and significant was happening. No one will ever know for sure, and as time passes, the people who remember the incident are fewer. But the story remains a quiet yet eerie part of Novoladsk's history. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you do and you want to hear more, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment down below, as it lets the algorithm know that you like my content and it promotes it to more people. My goal for the channel is to hit 50,000 subscribers, and we're closing in fast, so thank you, and back to the stories. My storytelling is a little bit shit, but whatever. This is just some shit I saw camping in Northern Ontario / Manitoba. So, last summer, I did a month-long trip on the Blood Vein River. We packed all our shit and took a train to a town in buttfuck nowhere called Red Lake. That place is depressing as shit, but looks nice as hell in the summer. Anyways, we stayed the night there and then drive out to a trail so we can portage to some lakes. We end up hopping between lakes until making our way to the Blood Vein River. We just paddle every day, making progress down the river and hitting sweet rapids. About a week into the trip, we saw a big-ass moose. This is important, I swear. Kinda weird we didn't see any sooner, but we were kinda loud, so we probably scared them off a bit. The moose kinda acted weird. When it saw us, it kinda stood there, looking at us in our canoes, and waited for us to leave, then went right back in the same direction. While it was looking at us, it acted super agitated. Kinda felt like it didn't want us to be there, or that we shouldn't be there. Kinda just shrugged it off and kept going. Couple days later, we hear a massive tree crack, followed by what sounded like a deer shrieking and a moose call. If you've never heard a moose call, it sounds like a groan, but this sounded quite a bit louder. This one sounded abnormally loud. Then another week into the trip, we took a rest day at a nice site with a little rapid that was good for fishing. Caught hella walleye and forgot to bury some of the scraps. I heard the same abnormally loud moose call while I was in the tent, but by that time, everyone was already asleep while I was up reading. Next morning, like 5:30 a.m., it's my turn to get breakfast ready, and I am up a half hour before everyone else. When I hop out of the tent, I saw some huge moose tracks leading toward and away from some fish bones. Seemed weird since they are herbivores. Be a moron and decide to take a leak and follow the tracks. Follow the tracks and see this big fucking moose, bigger than any other animal I've seen. Its skin looked like the pic related, probably because there was a massive forest fire in the area the year before, and I guess it might have been burned, but that would not explain why parts of its face looked mutilated and all of the wounds over its body looked rotted. There was a bit of a hole in its face, and you could see the jaw. I promptly shit myself and discreetly went back to the fire and finished cooking everyone's oats, but did not tell anyone, because they would think I'm a moron or a schizo. We left the site that morning and made our way a little further. By then, the area was less rocky and hilly and more marshy, so you can see further since everything is flat. Saw the same fucking moose in the distance, looking at my canoe, but probably looking at me. Keep in mind, this was like 2 to 3 days later, and 50 kilometers away. Decided to tell my friend about what I saw, since I had nothing really else to do, and was pretty freaked out. He kinda believed me, but still thought I was a little stupid, and told me it was probably just my imagination or some shit. Same situation in the morning, while me and my friend cooked breakfast. It came out of the forest without making any noise, and looked at us from a distance. He believed me now, lol. Basically, every few days for the rest of the trip, it just ominously looked over at us from a ways away, but never actually threatening us. Never had a clue how it kept up with us the whole time. Eventually get picked up at the Blood Vein Reserve. See the moose look at us for a moment, then disappear back into the forest. Drove to Winnipeg and took a train back to Toronto. Me and my friend were pretty silent the whole way back. Me and my friend have never ever told anyone. Okay, I got one. I normally don't tell this one because it sounds like a dumb creepypasta, but if it'll keep the thread going, maybe y'all will get some enjoyment out of it. Be in late middle school / early high school. Me and a friend, let's call him Jeff, are really into Minecraft and want to start up a server to play multiplayer with our other friends from school. We are both too stupid to make one ourselves, so we asked Jeff's older brother, Greg, to help us, cause he is a computer science major. Greg is an old school nerd, skinny fat, ponytail, wore exclusively black metal band t-shirts and played D&D, but only the super early version from the 70s, because it felt more immersive. Greg tells us that he and his neckbeard friends at college have a server that they've been playing around with, and says he will give us access as long as we do all of our building far away from spawn. We agree, figuring it will be more fun, starting a base fresh in our own little corner of the map. A few months go by, and me, Jeff, and a couple of our friends have a nice little fortress city built on a mountain by the sea. However, as we finish all our building projects, things dwindle to where me and Jeff are the only ones that get on anymore. For a few months, we mostly just stick around, fighting monsters, farming, and cliff jumping. Fast forward a few months, and even Jeff and I are only getting on about once a week or so. Our interest is peaked again when the never gets added to multiplayer. We add a portal to our existing base, get some of the boys together, and pull an all-nighter, exploring and building up a never outpost. The next week, Jeff tells me that Greg found what we were building and told us that the same rules apply to the never, and to not leave the chunk we built our outpost in. What the fuck, dude? We just want to explore. Tells us he will ban us from the server if we interfere with anything his group is building. Jeff and I all but stopped playing the game after Greg's little outburst. Around this time, Jeff's family was having issues with Greg, as he was causing trouble at his university, and just generally being more of an irate asshole. This was particularly hard on Jeff, who despite everything, still looked up to his big bro. He would occasionally mention how he'd get on the server by himself and walk around our base thinking about old times, I think to try to get me back on the server out of nostalgia. Greg eventually gets kicked out of his college for inappropriate use of the computer lab and cut off pretty much all contact from Jeff's family. I figured he'd been just using the computers to pirate shit or jack off to hentai until Jeff told me that Greg had given him admin privileges on the server and that we could go where we pleased. This was at the start of the summer, after our freshman year of high school, so we had a lot more time to fuck around. We spent a few days exploring the overworld, mostly your typical castles builds and some redstone shit we didn't want to fuck with. We also found a couple of mob grinders and stone structures that looked like they were trying to recreate Stonehenge, but with each slab placed way farther apart. Next, we find their nether portal and find their main base. It's a giant fuck-off fortress made almost entirely out of obsidian. Run around for a bit until we find a bunch of chests with some books filled with a mix of gibberish and what looks like Latin. Jeff gets pretty spooked, but I figured they were just doing it for some RP shit, since Greg was into D&D. Despite having admin privileges and having pretty much the whole server to ourselves, Jeff grows pretty reluctant to play. I figure it's because it reminds him of Greg, and we spend the rest of the summer doing other shit. Fast forward to near the end of the summer. Jeff is on vacation with his family, and I'm home alone with nothing to do, so I decide to hop back on and see if the Latin in any of those books translates to anything. Google Translate says it says something about summoning demons and creating new life. Holy shit, Greg and his neckbeard friends were trying to summon/make a demon in fucking Minecraft, lol. Text Jeff, thinking he'll find their cringy RP either funny, or he will finally get some closure as to what his bro was up to. Text me back, telling me to put everything back as we found it and to log out as soon as I can. Dude, you can't really believe there's a real demon loose on our server, right? Log off for the night, because I've gotten my fill of lols, but get back on the next day to copy down what I saw in those books so I can show Jeff when he gets back without having to get on the server. As I'm going through each chest, another player logs on and starts heading toward my location. Their player name is something in binary, and their skin is some corrupted red JPEG. Even back then, I figured it was an RP thing. They message me in the chat, telling me to return what I've stolen and leave. I toss him the book I was looking at and begin to ask him what's the deal with all these books, but he kicks me and bans me as soon as he checks the other chests to see that all of the other books are there. What the fuck? Ask Jeff if he can unban me when I see him again after the school year starts, but he is really wishy-washy about it and says he doesn't want to play anymore. I would have just chalked this up to family drama and bad roleplay had it not been for the fact that every electronic device in my room broke within a week of me getting kicked from the server. Everything from my phone to my watch to my alarm clock just stopped working. Ironically, my computer was the last thing to break, blue screening without warning one day when I turned it on. Over the next few months, my entire house starts having electrical issues. Multiple blackouts a month, AC and lights going out, and other stuff that's generally a pain in the ass for my folks. It was an older house, but we never had any issues like that ever since my encounter with the Minecraft cyber demon cult. End up moving houses due to continued electrical problems. Friendship with Jeff slowly fades. By senior year, we hardly talk to each other beyond saying sup as we pass each other in the hallway. Last I heard, he was going into computer science, like his big brother. TLDR, I may or may not have encountered a cult on Minecraft trying to conjure a cyber demon that may or may not have fucked up my house's electricity. As you can imagine, it sounds a whole lot like some gay Herobrine shit, which is why I don't bring it up often. But if it keeps the thread alive for better stories, then I'd say it was worth it. Grow up in the countryside. Homeschooled because my parents don't trust the government. Otherwise, they were great parents though. Don't have any neighbors or siblings, so no friends. Parents buy me comic books to spark my imagination. Start really enjoying Spider-Man. White Spider-Man becomes my favorite, pick related, so my parents make me a costume for my 10th birthday. Wear it every day. Parents encourage me to play outside more. Nothing out there.gif. Whatever. Pretend to be Spider-Man while jumping around the forest. Fast forward a few years. Always been tall for my age, and by the time I'm 15, I am 6 foot. Never really did sport though, except for running around the forest like Spider-Man, which I was getting pretty good at, so pretty thin and lanky. One evening, around 6ish, while playing near the road into town, I see a car's headlights stop still on the road. Go to investigate. Peering from the trees, I see some teenagers, maybe 18 or so, standing around the car. First time I've seen people other than my parents in years. Can't make out what they're saying, but they seem distressed and jittery. Want to go ask if I can help, but scared they won't like me. One of them peers in my direction. It's around sunset, so there's not loads of light. Unsure if he can see more or not. Our eyes lock for what feels like hours. Hear boom and instinctively drop into a prone position. Guy looks away briefly as the car starts smoking. He looks back towards me, but his gaze never settles. Wonder what he's looking for. Another one loudly says a naughty word. They all grab their stuff from their car and carry on foot. Want to learn more, so decide to follow them. Take off my Spider-Man mask so they'll know I'm not really Spider-Man if they see me, but try to stay hidden, because I think they might not like me. In my head, I'm their guardian angel. After about an hour, they come to a clearing. They begin to set up camp. Realize this is the same clearing where I reenact my Justice League operas. My limited edition Superman action figure is still buried there in a stunning twist when Zod imprisoned him at the end of my last episode. Think I can casually walk over and explain the situation, but notice that one of them is standing by their camp's outskirt, looking pretty intimidatingly into the forest. It's the same guy who was staring in my direction earlier. Decide to call him Weird Al. Circle around the forest surrounding the opening, looking for the easiest way to sneak into the camp. A twig snaps beneath me. Suddenly, Weird Al reacts really fast. Notice he is holding a gun and pointing it in my direction. Don't think he can see me though, since he keeps moving his aim around. Realize they're playing commandos. Pretty soon they get a fire going. It's pretty dark by now. Weird Al is sitting with the others in a circle around the fire. Can hear them talking and laughing. Want to know what they're saying, and still want my Superman figure back. Crawl on all fours towards their camp, cause I'm still playing Spider-Man. Certain they can't see me in this dark. Get close enough to make out what they're saying. Talking about ghosts and urban legends. Never heard a good ghost story outside my comic books before. Lie on the ground listening. Eventually fall asleep to their stories. Wake up a couple of hours later. Fire is still burning, but they're all gone. probably inside their tents. Stomach rumbling.jpg. See, they left some bags of food around. Figure they won't mind if I take some. Some weird plastic wrapping with something crunchy inside. Have to rip it open, but inside is a salty treat. Remember to grab my Spider-Man, dig around and retrieve it. Worry about the fire. Notice it's attracting moths. I don't want these guys to be attacked by a swarm of moths in the morning. Also don't want to contribute to greenhouse gases unnecessarily. Use one of their water bottles to douse out the fire. Decide to head home for the night, but promise myself to visit them again tomorrow to see how they're doing. Scamper away on all fours again, because I remember I'm still supposed to be Spider-Man. The next day. Don't tell my parents about the campers, because I've never had any real friends, and I'm scared that my parents will grow concerned. Return around 5 in the afternoon, with binoculars this time, so I can pretend I have spidey vision. Just before sunset, so it's still bright enough. Still wearing my Spider-Man suit without the mask. Again, wait at the edge of the clearing in the forest, spying on them through my binoculars. They've got new firewood, lots of it. Appear to be cooking a rabbit. Not cool, guys. Rabbits are our friends. Begin to wonder what rabbit tastes like. Remember, I need to focus. Weird Al is by their tents, looking at the forest, gun by side. On the other side of the fire, one of his friends is looking out the other direction and appears to have a gun too. I see they're finally taking commando seriously. The other 3 people, 2 girls and a guy, are sitting close together. The guy is tending to the rabbit and the girls are wrapped in the blanket. Watch them for a while. One of the girls reminds me of Mary Jane. Wonder if she can be my girlfriend, like in the comic. Eventually go back to Weird Al. Feel something on my shoulder. Draw up my binocs as I swat a spider away. Hear shouting. Look over at the camp. Weird Al is pointing his gun in my direction and shouting. The cooking trio back away. The other guy with the gun rushes to Weird Al's side. I'll call him Friendly Steve because he seems less tense. Friendly Steve points his gun in my direction too. What the fuck? Decide he's more like Angry Steve. Not entirely convinced they're actually aiming at me. Start circling the edge again like last night. Weird Al starts shouting at me. Can't make out what he's saying. It's better to say nothing and have people think you're stupid than open your mouth and confirm your stupidity. Shouts at me again. I have no idea what to do. Parents were right. I am too immature for social situations. Tony Stark would surely know what to do. Suddenly hear a loud bang, and the tree next to me explodes. Well, a chunk of it explodes off. Instinctively crouch into prone position. Several more bangs. Can't see Weird Al or Angry Steve very well, cause they are surrounded by smoke, but see a few flashes of light. Eventually realize they're shooting at me. What did I ever do to them though? Run off on all fours again. With my experience, it's much faster than running. Get home and start crying. Parents ask what's wrong. Tell them I met some cool youths and they did not like me. Parents hug me and tell me maybe it's because of my costume. Mom thinks it's proof that I'm not ready to have friends. Dad insists that this could be good, since I am showing initiative by going out to meet people. They settle on dressing me appropriately tomorrow so I could reintroduce myself. They assure me that if I just be myself, the kids will like me. Take comfort in their words. Next day, dress in an old t-shirt and sweatpants. Put on my best smile and head out to meet them. Mom offers me some cherries before I leave for good luck. Don't mind if I do. Must have eaten like 30 cherries. Had cherry juice all over my mouth. As I'm wandering through the forest, cherries attract flies, which cause me to stop paying attention, and I slip in deer feces. On the verge of tears, cause I smell like deer shit. Want to head back, but no. Have to be strong enough if I'm ready for friends. Heading towards camp. I see Mary Jane wandering around the forest. She keeps calling out a name, Ben I think. Stand still watching her. She sees me. At first she winces. Remember what my parents told me about being social. Smile at Mary Jane. Smile, and the world smiles with you after all. She does not smile. She takes a step back. Have you seen my friend Ben, she says. She says it really fast. Repeat it back to her a couple of times to digest it and look down. Oh no. My parents say it's rude to break eye contact. Look back at her in the eye. Well, she says. Again, I repeat it. Think, and then say, your friend Ben, I have not seen, so she will think I'm mysterious and mystic. Notice she is covering her nose. Why? She suddenly looks really scared. I go to comfort her, and she immediately runs off into the forest. That was weird. Carry on, and come to the old factory river. You should never swim in it because there was a factory upstream that leaked its sewage into it. My dad was really upset about it, but apparently it was not illegal due to some weird loophole or something. Here talking. Crouch low and walk downstream towards the voices, hiding behind bushes. See Weird Al and Angry Steve playing in the water. See all their stuff about 100 meters away on the shore. Their guns. Guns are bad, my parents always say, and as the only resident on site, it's my duty to confiscate them until they are ready to leave. Walk over and take them. Weird Al and Angry Steve don't even notice, too busy playing. Guns are heavy, and so, after around 20 minutes, I put them in a ditch and cover them with leaves so I can get them later. Carry on towards their camp. Get there and it's empty, not a soul in sight. Rabbit leftovers are on a spit over the fire's remains. Since no one is around, I decide to take a bite of the rabbit, just to taste it. Easier said than done. End up accidentally breaking the spit, trying to tear a bit off. Lose my balance and trample over one of the tents. Whoops. Draw a peace sign in the dirt in Kryptonian as a way of apologizing. The rabbit did not even taste very good in the end. Make my way back home. I would return in the evening. Gets dark out, and I've changed my clothes. I've completely forgotten about the cherries on my face. Mary Jane must have thought I was some sort of cherry bandit. Face is all washed now though. Put on my best suit. After all, this is my last chance to make friends. Thinking about it, up until she ran away, me and Mary Jane actually got on pretty well. Maybe there's hope for us yet. Work my way back to the edge of the clearing. Their camp is a huge fire. They are all out of sight though. No stores or cooking. See that they did not put the tent that I trod on back up. See the other tent rustle. Weird Al rushes out past the fire. In the moonlight, I just about make out him running 20 meters or so and then stopping. He stands still for another 30 seconds with his back to the camp before running back to the camp. Just before he reaches the fire, he stops and looks in my direction. Has he seen me? Hurrah, I can finally introduce myself. He starts shaking and shouting. Not wanting a repeat of yesterday, I make myself visible by stepping out of the bushes so they don't think I'm a deer or something. Weird Al shouts at me, and this time, I hear what he says. Ben, is that you? I repeat it back, then realize what I said. Of course I'm not Ben, idiot. Remember to smile. Find it hard to smile and talk, so just shake my head. End up accidentally shaking my whole body. By now, the rest of the gang has come out of the tent. I say the rest, but there is only 4 of them. One of the guys is missing. That must be this Ben they were asking about. Begin to wonder to myself where he is. They are all staring at me weirdly and shivering, even though it's summer. Where is Ben? I shout. Angry Steve whispers to Weird Al, and Weird Al shouts back that he does not know. Then he shouts at me, what have you done with Ben? If this is a game, I don't get it. Decide that the only way to earn their trust is to impress them. Drop down onto all 4s and do my Spider-Man crawl, so they will see how agile I am. They immediately scream and all run away. How weird. Run after them. Matching their pace is surprisingly easy. Maybe because the girls had short legs. Follow Weird Al into the forest. The forest shields the moonlight, so I can only see his silhouette. He turns to me. Roger, did you see that thing? It looked human, but its movements. Can't think of anything to say, so just nod. Weird Al keeps talking, saying how useful his AR would be right now. No idea what he means. Eventually meet up with the others. Celebrations all round. Finally, they accept me. They must have been impressed by my Spider-Man crawl after all. Angry Steve says they should try to find the car. What about Ben? I muster in my best Weird Al impression to show him I'm one of many talents. I hate to say it, James, but I think he's gone. Says the girl who is not Mary Jane. Who on earth is James? Suddenly, Mary Jane stops walking. What is it, Sam? Angry Steve asks. Mary Jane whispers in his ear. He raises his arm and starts pointing at us while counting. Ben is not here, he says very slowly. Weird Al replies, yeah, before suddenly standing up straight. He just screams run and takes off. Everyone scatters. Begin to think my new friends are a little weird. Decide to go home. Never did find out what happened to Ben, but that forest is full of ditches, so he was probably just playing hide and seek. Still can't believe Weird Al and Angry Steve were playing in the water. My dad says the factory's chemicals mean that bathing in it will make your hair fall out for sure. Anyway, that is my weird story.